All right, we are here live with Harvey Valdes. It is awesome to hear him perform this music, and it's very, very near and dear to my heart, which we'll discuss a little bit in depth. Harvey, thanks so much for joining today. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Ah, again, thanks for having me.
So normally on these, make weird music live interviews, there's something I don't know off-putting. But this music is so relaxing and enjoyable in many senses of the word. But what's interesting to me is, well, there's a couple of things. You are a phenomenal improvisational guitarist, and anyone who's following you on Instagram will see that you know what you're doing. You and David Torn are out there.
We'll try to figure out whatever the muck is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But but this is so different and ordered,
Thank
compared
you.
to
Yeah.
the stuff that I came to know you for. Once you started
Right.
playing Bach, I was like, "What? What's going on here?" So
I know.
tell
I
us
think I said the
about.
same thing to myself.
Yeah. So I'll stop talking. You start. Go for it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So yes, I'm a totally improvisational guitar player. That's kind of the world that I live in mostly. But alongside of that too, of course, playing normal guitar stuff. I mean, that's part of my job too, since I work in musicals, Broadway musicals. But Bach has always been kind of this music that's been in my life pretty much as a guitar player, learning about the guitar and early on in my teens, having somebody say, you should check out this piece of music by Bach and not being able to do anything with it because realizing how freaking hard it was. But it was always something that was kind of like, whether it be the sonatas or partitas or the lute suites, these manuscripts have been around on music stand kind of through my whole kind of learning and playing life. And anyway, the pandemic kind of really put it all together for me in terms of like, I can really go in really deep with this music and see what I can come out with. I was already practicing a bit of the Lute Suite 997. Probably around 5 years ago, I started really getting deep into that and learning it really, like getting it in my fingers and ears and everything. But the pandemic afforded me the opportunity to kind of sit down and really go all in.
So these pieces are typically, well, they were written for lute, and
Mm-hmm.
you did have. There are some videos on your Instagram of you performing on lute. I think it was a 7 course instrument. 20. I forget.
13 course,
It was
24 strings.
That's what it was. Yeah. So tell us about the lute, and you're playing the lute and then bringing this music to electric guitar. Some of the motivation for doing that, other than like, well, it's always been around this music.
Yeah, no, I think also like in my own solo guitar work, I explore a lot of counterpoint. Counterpoint is a big thing of what I do in my solo guitar work. Uh, so I'm always interested in that, and it felt like going to the source a bit to seeing what's at the source of counterpoint. Bach and counterpoint. So uh, I thought playing it. The funny thing was I mostly practice the music on a nylon string of classical guitar to develop right hand technique. And doing that on an electric guitar is a lot of work. It's actually, it's still a lot of work on a nylon string classical, but uh, it's not so unwieldy, right? The electric guitar has a lot of, the strings resonate a lot. There's a lot going on with it that you have to manage. That's a whole other thing that gets in the way of the music. Um, So I think there was a video that I did with a 12 string guitar that was sent to me by my friend Nick DeLille of Island Instruments, and I was playing 99 Suite Lute Suite a lot, and I thought, oh, what the hell? Let me just play this on the 12 string guitar, see what it sounds like, and it had such a vibe. It kind of sounded like a harpsichord a little bit, right? And I posted that video and just like, here, just put this out there and showcases the instrument too, for Nick. And it sounded cool. And there was a lot of interest into it. It was interesting, and I never thought like, oh, okay, this is just be a thing. And but there was a lot of interest, and I had a lot of friends telling me like, dude, this is a total sound. Like you should consider recording this. Like, I don't know, that sort of thing. But I entertained the idea, and I thought for a while like, oh, doing it on 12-string guitar would be super cool. Right. It kind of has the sound a little bit of a harpsichord, which you hear this Bach's music played a lot on. This keyboard, and essentially, actually, the lute suites were actually not really written for lute. They're actually written for keyboard music. So kind of like, okay, I'm bridging that sort of keyboard music sound, guitar, but like soon enough, it's like, okay, a 12-string guitar playing Bach. You kidding me? No way. I'll have no hands left. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah, someone just brought up in the chat, Jedak. I actually don't know how to say his name out loud, but he's followed for a long time.
Cool.
It's a very different approach to Baroque music on electric guitar than what came out of the neoclassical shred with Yngwie Malmsteen.
Right.
And when people think Bach on the electric guitar, I'm guilty of this too, shred rock, Bach and roll, this kind of stuff, finger tapping and fast and whatever, the neoclassical riffs, Joe Stump, these kinds of guys.
Yeah.
But you went in the opposite direction. So, and what I appreciate a lot as someone who has nails and pretends to play classical guitar at night, you use a lot of open strings and you take certain arrangement liberties, not with the notes, but with the placement of the notes on the electric guitar. So
right.
Can you tell us about, why didn't you go shred on this?
Well, for exactly, I mean, it's been done.
Exactly.
Been done.
Yeah.
I mean, like Yngwie, I mean, I don't know if I could top Yngwie, man.
I know. Who can?
Right?
No one can wear those leather pants.
Well, that's part of it. The leather pants and the ruffled shirt, Yeah, well, it's a good question, and I think it's pointing to the thing of like, I haven't heard anyone approach it with the same sensitivity that a classical guitar player would do it. I don't know, I haven't heard anybody doing an electric guitar, and as in my own solo guitar work, I kind of am already playing finger style contrapuntal music, so I was already kind of in the sonic aesthetic. That's kind of what I do. So playing this music, Bach's music, felt pretty natural to me, in that sense of just like, I already have a sound that I kind of work with, so let me play on here, and it worked for me. I was like, okay, this is working. And that's a thing too. It's like I don't know. I don't want to get into the world of like acceptance of the electric guitar in the classical world. I mean, that's a whole fight that I don't want to fight, but yeah, at the same time, it's like, it is a statement speaking to that world. Like, this instrument can function equally as many of the instruments that traditionally you hear in that world. You don't have to treat it as this sort of special effect instrument. You can treat it as a concert instrument as well. Why not?
I agree. I actually, that's a major reason why the electric guitar is my favorite instrument, because you can do anything with it. It is just the most incredible, portable, versatile instrument. You plug it into an amp, play it, unamplified. You can do tapping, ambient, loops. It's incredible, and
it's endless possibilities.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There's no portable piano,
yeah,
and
not at all.
Yeah. So let's take a look, or let's listen to the Allegro from BWV 998. Any setup you want to introduce here before we take a listen?
No, I mean, this is one of the faster pieces on the record. Yeah, it's quite a finger workout.
You maybe introduce the concept of a fugue so people know what to listen to.
Well, this one actually, are we looking at the Allegro?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was thinking of the last piece we're gonna play.
Oh yeah. Well, we can talk about the fugue later. Yeah. The Allegro is just a bright piece. I mean, this one is part of the 998 suite. So the 998 suite is in 3 parts: the prelude, and then the prelude, then the fugue, and then the Allegro. So I kind of feel that it's like the wrap up piece. It's the exciting kind of like, we've reached the peak here.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Let's take a listen. All right, some of you may have seen me shaking my head during some of that, and it's because that piece is so brutally difficult. And you are playing it at light speed. I mean, I don't know if anyone who's listening to this would say that, but to someone who's played I can only play this at like 50, 60% speed, and I'm like, it's so beautiful. I'm just going to play it slow, but you nail it.
Oh, man, thank you. It's a finger buster for sure.
Whew. Yeah, I feel like I just got to work out listening to it.
Yeah.
And I was telling you before the interview, most people, they know Make Word Music for the King Crimson guitar stuff, or
sure.
I do a lot of stuff with like Morgan Ogren, Michael Manring, and it ends up being like a lot of notes. But I enjoy playing. This is the music I enjoy playing and listening to when I'm not doing anything with weird music. But man, listening to this album was like, oh my goodness, he just nailed it. You did such a great job with it.
Oh, thank you, man. Appreciate that so much. Thank you.
So I don't know if you know Paul Richards from the California Guitar Trio.
Oh yeah, sure.
But Paul just left a question saying, I'd like to hear more about how Harvey gets that almost acoustic sound with the electric guitar. Were any microphones used? And feel free to pull out your, is it Teufel? Is that how you say
Yeah,
it?
it's a Teufel.
Yeah.
Yeah, Teufel Tesla. No microphones were used. I recorded that here at home. I recorded that through a Fryette GPDI, it's a small little 1 watt amp, desktop amp. It's a tube amp. It's got a lot of routing possibilities on it. It has its own on like analog cab mic simulation on there as well. So essentially, what I did with that was I ran an out to a 2 notes torpedo VB101, which is basically a cabinet IR loader thing, simulation. And I had 2 different cabs set up in there with virtual mic set up in there, so like a room mic and the closed mic thing. And then I also had the onboard cabinet mic simulation from the Fryette GPDI, and also just a straight DI, so kind of cutting right through the middle of that. So I think what ended up happening was this: you get this sort of 3D, 3-dimensional sort of acoustic thing happening, and I think the act just of plain dry DI sound is cutting right through in the middle to kind of let things speak a bit. There is a lot of reverb on there too, so just having that DI in the middle kind of, I think, added to this sort of acoustic dimension to it.
Yeah, Michael Manring, he actually he performs, or when he's recording his solo bass albums, he has some ambient microphones, so you can hear his fingers on the strings and hitting the instrument, and it adds such an incredible feeling, like you're in the room listening to him play.
Right.
I definitely get the sense of that. I know you didn't record microphonically with this, but I feel like the tone you captured does that. Is that something that the Teufel guitar pickups offer, like almost like a piezo option?
There's no piezo on it. It's just 2 pickups. It's a single coil in the neck and a humbucker in the bridge. And the instrument just speaks. I'll just say that much. The construction of it has that upper bout. I have the instrument actually right here. So the upper bout here, meeting at about the 7th fret, basically makes the instrument really articulate in the low range. And I think it probably does something too to the treble strings too. But overall, it's just such an even balanced sound.
Could you hold it up so we can see the whole thing? Oh, and you'll have to speak so Zoom switches to you.
Yeah, so that's it. I mean, so just 2 pickup, and that's all I have. This pickup selector just chooses between the neck or bridge. But yeah, the neck pickup is a single coil, and it's pretty open sounding. So I think that also, obviously, that will contribute to this kind of like this open, acoustic-ish sound. Yeah.
Right on. So we have a few minutes left. It would be cool if you could maybe provide a little of an intro to the Bach lute suites. And then I'd like to ask you about some of your contemporary players that you've met. Like I saw you just posted something with Andy Summers, and David Torrens provided some great, nice comments. And yeah. So anyway, tell us about the lute suites. Maybe provide a little education for people who may be unfamiliar with, like, what is BWV 996 when you say 996? What does that even mean?
It's just a naming convention. I mean, the guy Bach wrote, so much music, and that basically it's just the naming convention of just it's like composition number 1, composition number 2. They're written within the dance forms of like a saraband or an allemande, and the lute suites themselves, just a collection of the lute suites, as I was saying before, it was actually written as keyboard music, and possibly even an instrument called a Lautenwerk, which is a keyboard instrument with gut strings inside of it to mimic the sound of a lute. They say that Bach did own a lute, so he was aware of it, and he was friends with Sylvius Leopold Weiss, which was one of the biggest lute players of the time. But it's an interesting thing about like how this kind of took off, and I don't really know the full history, obviously, about like where it started, where lute players gravitated to this music. I think there was a player of the time, Falkenhagen, that transcribed some of the music, so it could have been started from around that area at that time with him. But it's an interesting thing about like how this kind of took off, and I don't really know the full history, obviously, about like how where it started, where lute players gravitated to this music. I think there was a player of the time, Falkenhagen, that transcribed some of the music, so it could have been started from around that area at that time with him. where lute players found their way to this music, and eventually it started taking off into the guitar world. Andre Segovia having a big part of that, you know. But yeah, there's 4 lute suites, and there's a couple other ones that are kind of in the umbrella of the lute works, like the Fugue of G minor, you know, 1001. That's also from the sonatas and partitas. This Prelude in C minor 999, and then another one that's in E major. So anyway, yeah, I mean, the Bach, like the historical information of all this can be a whole, you know, years worth of talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you, it sounded like you might have had either a dropped tuning or the whole guitar was tuned lower. Were you half step, whole step down?
I was a half step down. So traditionally you'll hear guitar players play this, a lot of these pieces in A minor. So I brought it down to A flat. I was kind of in a space early on when I was playing this music of, you know, okay, let me see if I can get into like 415 tuning, you know, Baroque tuning by playing it lower. But that wasn't quite working out. The low end would get a little bit lost when it was going that low. So finding the in-between of going down a half step seemed to help. And also part of it was also kind of getting the right tension on the strings. So I felt like just having that just a little less tension, again, makes it easier to play.
Excellent. All right. So we can wrap it up, but tell people a little about your, like, why most people who know who you are might know who you are, and where they can find out more about you.
Sure. Well, you can definitely find out more about me on my Instagram / Harvey Valdes. Of course, also my website, harveyvaldes.net. I've released a bunch of records already and played a bunch of other people's records. And I think on my Instagram, you'll see I've had like a long going series of morning improv videos. So you can check out a lot of the stuff I've done there. And you know, it's basically like my morning get up and start getting my hands on a guitar and then hit record and see what comes out. And sharing it with the community. And
you do have other releases out, right?
Yeah. So my previous record was Solitude and Tones of Zone. It's Echo, which is also a solo guitar record. Kind of based off of the idea of what I was doing with my morning improvs, just starting with one idea and seeing where it would take me. There was another trio record, which is a whole different thing than like my solo guitar music, which was a little bit more aggressive. It was a trio record called Point Counterpoint. Guitar, violin, drums. There's my tunes. And it was, pretty heavy kind of metal-ish, jazz-ish, experimental-ish thing.
Cool. Yeah. So I've got in the, the lower right-hand corner of the screen, harveyvaldes.net. And then the lower left hand is your Instagram handle, Harvey Valdes. And I really want to encourage people to check this out. This album, you know, I get a lot of emails from people saying, "Oh, there's not enough weird music on Make Weird Music," and I don't think this fits the weirdo, you know, sort of whatever. But to me, this is real music, like, and it's authentic, and you're playing, you know, from the heart. And this stuff is so difficult. There's room for all kinds of music, and I just hope people check this out and enjoy what they've heard. So check out Harvey's stuff. You can buy a physical copy of the CD, which I just did before this interview, or you can buy the digital copy. Both are on Bandcamp.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, cool. So thanks again, Harvey. Really appreciate you taking the time with us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, thanks again.
And then why don't you set us up for... Are we doing the final track, Fugue in G minor, the 1000?
Sure, yeah. We could do the Fugue in G minor. So the Fugue is one. I mean, this Fugue in particular is the Fugue. You know, it's from the sonatas and partitas. You would hear there. It's BWV 1001. One of my favorite performances of this piece is Julian Bream playing this. I think it's on YouTube, and it's front of a like TV audience, live at a TV audience thing, you know, a TV show, and it's just unbelievable what he does with it. And he has a way to make the notes sort of dance a bit, although a fugue is not traditionally have anything to do with dancing. But the fugue it's a statement, it's a melodic statement. It starts at the top and then is being answered also melodically in the lower voice as well. And this one goes through a lot of permutations of the main developmental idea.
Yeah, and so just anyone who's listening, listen for the initial motif,
Yes.
and then listen for it to sort of flower throughout the piece.
You'll start to hear the kind of the answer to the main motif right underneath it. Yeah.
Yep. And one quick thing before we go, I know this is like the longest ending ever. I tend to do this, but we are interviewing. We're setting up an interview, I believe, for next week with an excellent woodwind player named Aurelie Doreau. She plays like an ergonomic flute. It's got like a flat mouthpiece, and then it's a vertically performed flute. And she has a new album with Marcus Reuter, which is actually right here. It's so fantastic. It's this ambient flute album with soundscapes behind them by Marcus. And man, I have been loving this. It's a double CD, so it's a beautiful package. Aurelie, she'll be here next week, and working on a couple of other interviews, one with Courtney Swain from Bent Knee, the singer Bent Knee. She has a brand new album out that you should check out. I think it's called Silver Linings, if I remember correctly. And we do have a couple more live interviews coming up before I leave for Europe on May 25th. And then finally, if you do want to support Make Weird Music, there's a join button below the video player. It's $3 a month. You get a little Club Weird logo next to your name in the chat, and really appreciate people who do that. And yeah, a lot of people saying thank you, Harvey, for this beautiful album. So yeah, great work on this. Please check it out. Bandcamp, harveyvaldes.net. And thanks again, Harvey. Let's listen.
Thanks again.
Yeah.